Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Yeah, I'll just quickly recap things that we discussed in the last class. We were discussing about different types of shrinkages, right? So basically, all this topic comes under this, how your concrete behaves under different environmental conditions or given situation. So basically, the failure mechanism in your concrete. So this can be in three ways. So the disintegration between the materials that you use for preparing concrete. So the this memberment, and it can get some parts can get dissolved, and that may lead to dissolution, and then you may expect your concrete to erode. So these things would lead to, so when you have dismemberment, that could lead to cement matrix swelling or the aggregate swelling, depending on what type of cement and aggregate that you use. And if that has tendency to absorb moisture and expand, that will lead to such type of cement matrix swelling and aggregate swelling. And then you can experience capillary cavity swelling if your concrete is subjected to, you know um, constant moisture condition. Then that can, the free pores inside the concrete can absorb some water. And these are like some effects and cause that you can expect when you have concrete in different environmental situation. And so in this case, when you have dissolution, your cement particles can get dissolved, and that may lead to some other uh, reaction, and thus the reactant product could lead to disintegration, and similarly you will have dissolution of your aggregates. So this erosion and thing comes under abrasion and cavities. So depending on how severe the friction force is acting on the surface of your concrete structure, that will lead to such issues. So in detail about these things we will look in the coming lectures. And before getting into that, I'll just want to cover this curling and wrapping of concrete slab on grade. So in the last class I was mentioning, the significance of drying shrinkage. So when your surface is getting dried, that tends to shorten, and whereas when it is subjected to different temperature conditions, when your concrete is heated, that tends to expand. So under high temperature, when your concrete is being heated, and that will lead to expansion, whereas when your concrete is getting dried, that will lead to shortening. So in this case, the curling and wrapping of a concrete slab and cord is a very common problem that you can observe on any pavements, because the large surface area of the pavement is exposed to the environmental conditions, which will lead to drying on the top surface. So when you have the top member, most of the time that will be in the dry environment, whereas your bottom member will be subjected to moist environment. So you can see here, so you have a slab on grade, and typically these represents your joint. So the top surface of your slab, that basically in a dry environment, that tries to contract, whereas your bottom surface remains, which is in contact with the soil, so that remains same length, because most of the time that will be in the moist environment at slab soil interface. So what happens when your top surface, this surface try to contract, so that kind of curls upward. So warping happens upward, so the slab curls upward when the top surface contacts, whereas your bottom surface remains moist. Or you can put in another way, your top is drier than the bottom surface, so that tries to contract, whereas your bottom remains in the same length and tends to move upward. So we call it as curling upward direction. So this is the case when you have dry environment at slab your interface. So this is kind of, because of that moisture gradient, you experience such type of curling issues or warping issues of your concrete slab on grade. Whereas, in some cases, when you have a solar system, so top surface being get, so that will get heated. So in such cases, what happens? Your top surface tries to expand, and your bottom, that will try to deform in such a way that instead of this type of curls upward, you may observe curl downward reaction. So that is the case when you have a temperature variation. So here you have a moisture gradient, and because of that, your the top surface becomes dry, and then the bottom surface is moist. Whereas in the other case, when you have temperature gradient, the reaction is going to be similar, but it will be in the other way. So your top tries to expand instead of contracting. So in such cases, your bottom surface try to curl downward to remain in the same length due to the temperature variation. So what happens when you have temperature gradient? You can observe this in the other, yeah, reverse direction. So you have curl downwards, right? So when you need to control drying shrinkage, you need to take care of the different factors that could influence the performance of concrete. One is type of cement, and then the aggregate size, aggregate type that you use, how much cement that you will be using in your concrete, and then the slump amount, how workable your concrete is, and curing and placement temperature and aggregate state. So all these things governs the drying shrinkage thing. So when you have type 1 and type 2, you can have less shrinkage, and when you have type 3 cement, you will be facing high increased shrinkage. Why? Because type 3 cement that tends to liberate more heat, which will lead to a lot of shrinkage issues. And again, when you go with the bigger size aggregate, then that will help you to attain better dimensional stability than the smaller size, and then the less reactive aggregate, and the less cement content to be used. So when you have 325, that is lesser than the 415 kg per meter cube, so in that case you can observe reduced shrinkage for this particular concrete. And the slump amount, that has to be reasonable for obtaining the acquired workability. Whereas when you have more workable concrete, that indicates basically you have more water content in it, and that will lead to increased shrinkage. And curing temperature, if you sorry curing conditions, if you increase the duration of your curing, then that will help you to reduce the shrinkage by covering your concrete surface. So when you increase the duration from 3 to 7, you can reduce the shrinkage. And then the temperature, if the temperature is too high, that will lead to moisture evaporation and increased shrinkage. And when you have the quality of aggregate, the state of aggregate, that plays a good role. So if you have dirt or aggregate, that will lead to lot of fine particles in your concrete, and that will lead to increased shrinkage. So in that case, if you use washed aggregates, you can observe less shrinkage compared to the one that you use with dirty aggregate. So these are things that you can consider while selecting the concrete materials. And then the last type of shrinkage type that we have is that carbonation shrinkage. So here the shrinkage occurs without the not from within the matrix, but mainly the surface of your concrete that is going to undergo such reaction. So surface zone of concrete undergoes shrinkage due to the carbonation of hydrated cement particles. That means your hydrated cement particles has calcium hydroxide, and that the calcium hydroxide is getting dissolved when it gets carbonated, and it deposits the product called calcium carbonate. So this calcium carbonate, it occupies the space free from the stress, because the volume of the calcium carbonate is lesser than the volume of your calcium hydroxide. So when you get the calcium carbonate as the reactant product, so you are getting something that is less in volume, that is going to occupy in this space. So now you have less volume occupant. So because of that, the you observe shrinkage, as you have less volume product to be filled in the spaces free from these stresses. All right. So now you have to see the carbonation will not occur at all the time. So basically, that depends on the relative humidity of your atmospheric condition. So when you have carbonation, so the carbonation increases the shrinkage at intermediate relative humidities. So that means when you have low relative humidity or higher relative humidity, you will not observe any significant carbonation. So here is an example where you can see three cases. One is shrinkage due to drying, another one is shrinkage due to simultaneous drying and carbonation. That means your concrete is experiencing both drying, shrinkage and carbonation simultaneously. And then the third case is you have shrinkage subjected to drying condition, and then subsequently you have carbonation condition. So in this case, the point to note is that the subsequent drying carbonation condition is leading to higher shrinkage strain, thus the failure will be critical in this condition, where compared to the other condition where you have only drying and simultaneous drying and carbonation. In all these point, you note that the carbonation shrinkage strain is higher at the point where you have relative humidity of about 50%, whereas this shrinkage strain gets reduced when the relative humidity is coming down below 50 or going up above 50. So the point is that you have this intermediate relative humidity at which you can observe greater shrinkage strain due to carbonation, as well as you can expect the drying to occur simultaneously. So when you have drying and then the subsequent carbonation, your shrinkage value will be higher at intermediate relative humidity. So why? Because at low relative humidity, there is insufficient water in pores to form the carbonic acids with the carbon dioxide. On the other hand, when you have higher relative humidity, all the pores will be saturated, so the diffusion of CO2 will be relatively slow. So because of this condition, you expect your concrete to experience higher carbonation at 50% relative humidity. So now let's look at the creep deformation. So you all know what is creep. Creep is like when your concrete is subjected to a sustained loading conditions for longer duration that will experience inelastic deformation, right? So this type of creep behavior can be experienced when you have large span structures, and those things will be subjected to heavy loading conditions. So here you can see a mid-span creep deflection on a bridge in Deventer, the Netherlands. So this bridge here at the mid-span, so this got deflected. So this region you can see. So this is basically due to the creep actions where you have large spans subjected to heavy loading conditions. So here in this case, when you have such a huge structure, so the self weight of the structure itself would lead to creep effect when it is especially at the midspan of your girder. And other forms of the creep that you can expect is that compression creep, when you have axial load acting on the member for a longer duration. So that will act as a sustained load in axial loading case for longer duration. So the such type of creep can be experienced when you have piers columns with different heights and lengths. So this bridge indicates, here you can see the height of the column is higher. As you go away from this point, you can see the height got reduced. So the problem with this type of structure is that when you have such different heights, that may lead to differential settlement when that is deforming. Okay, so when your pillar sorry, when your column or piers, those are experiencing axial load, what is going to happen? Your axial member is going to get shortened in height or length due to the creep condition. So in such cases, you may experience differential settlement, especially when you have different heights due to different. So what happens when you have such differential settlements on this type of structures? So when the vehicle is passing, so you can see a lot of undulations. The surface will not be uniform, and you cannot experience smooth ride when you have such differential settlements of on your structure. So it is very important to take care that even if the columns are deforming due to creep, so the differential deformation that should be in the same level, so that you can minimize the differential settlement as much as possible, so that you can avoid significant undulation on the surface of your structure to have smooth ride. Another example is that pre-stressed concrete, where you go apply the axial pre-stress to enhance the performance of your structure. So when your structure is already under stressed conditions in axial direction, so over the duration that is going to induce creep losses. So you may experience long-term losses. So in such cases, the purpose of applying stress is to increase the capacity of your member, right, compared to your conventional reinforced concrete system. So that is why we go with pre-stressed concrete systems to achieve higher capacity with thin elements compared to your conventional reinforced concrete system. So this will help you to produce longer elements with um, less thickness, and that will help you to reduce the overall dead load of your structure. But when the pre-stress loss occurs due to creep, so that is going to affect whole structural capacity of your element, and thus the capacity of your structure. So we need to give attention in such systems in such a way that your structures will not experience such losses due to creep significantly. And even if that experience, that has to be within the limit, so that you can anticipate the limit while you design the structure itself, and you can take corrective measurements accordingly. Even if you expect such loss due to creep, how it has to be compensated, how the design has to be modified. So those things have to be given consideration when you choose pre-stressed concrete system for your project. So that is for compressive creep. And then you can expect your member to experience flexural creeps subjected to flexural loading conditions. So this is actually an arch bridge, but here you can see, because of the flexural creep, this portion actually become almost flat. So this is the bridge that you can this was taken no, this image was taken from Wad Street Mania. And another example of such flexural creeps there, you can so the structure that can experience such flexural creeps is tunnel structures. Because when you have tunnels, so you basically, your structure is going to experience heavy loads due to the surrounding condition. So here you can see the tunnel is subjected to surround a heavy load, and on top of this, so all this is going to induce flexural load on top of your tunnel, and over the time that is going to induce flexural creep. And here is an element that shows cut and cover section. So you basically cut and cover your tunnel part, and that will be under the soil condition. When you have mountains or hills, you basically uh, cut the sections and cover it with you have when you need to construct such type of tunnel element. So in such cases, above to this element is going to take such heavy loads coming from soil or thing. So in such cases, this will experience flexural creep. And here you can see the tunnel lining with precast elements. And again, the whole surroundings will be subjected to heavy soil and loading conditions, which will lead to such flexural creeps. So these are typical structures that you can when you need to design or construct these structures, the immediate thing that you have to look to ensure the durability of the structure is that flexural creep. So now, how can you address those type of shrinkage and the creep in hardened concrete? So before selecting the concrete for particular applications, what you can do is you can design the concrete in the laboratory scale, and you can study or understand how the particular type of concrete is going to behave when you experience such type of situations. So either shrinkage or creep. So you are all familiar with the type of how the shrinkage occurs, and based on its loading conditions, and based on its moisture lost, so you experience strain. So what you have to do is, for measuring shrinkage, you basically uh, seal the surfaces so that you are controlling the moisture evaporation at only one side. And you can, this is the thing for autogeneous shrinkage, because you're not allowing a moisture to loss to the environment, and moisture is being lost within the system. So now, having that, you can measure the change in length, because during shrinkage your concrete is going to shrink, so the length is going to get shortened. So you can measure the change in length to get the strain value, so that you will understand how concrete can perform when when it is subjected to that condition. And when you need to obtain the drying shrinkage, you have to keep all the sides exposed, and then you have to measure the change in length to get the strain values. If you need to get both, if you need to get deformation due to both shrinkage and creep, you need to this basically explains that your all the sides are exposed, and your member is subjected to compressive loading here. So in this case, you can get the total deformation due to creep and shrinkage. Whereas if you want to get only the creep effect, then you have to close all the sides, and then you have to just apply the compressive loads just to get the creep effect alone. So you will get only basic creep strain if you allow your elements to the constant load for longer duration by sealing all the sides of your element. So you can see the test setup we typically use for measuring the shrinkage. So this one, you can see that this is the condition for unrestrained shrinkage test setup. All the sites were exposed here, and you basically mark 2 points on the surface, and you have the pins called DMAC pin. This is basically known as demountable mechanical cages, and then you have a DMAC cage. So this basically helps you to measure the distance between the 2 points that you marked on the surface. So here you can see the concrete surface, those are exposed, and the concrete surface which got sealed. So the test specimens exposed and sealed, and 2 pins were marked on the surface. Using that, you can take the readings. So you can keep this, typically the cage length will be about 150 mm, or you can get it for 100 or 200 mm as well. So you can measure the distance between these 2 points, and over the time you can monitor the distance, and you can note down the change in length to calculate the strain values. So this is for unrestrained shrinkage test setup, and you can also have restrained shrinkage test setup. So in which you are not allowing the free expansion. So you have already a mold kind of thing. So you can see a steel ring, and then you have your concrete specimen, and now the steel ring will not allow the concrete specimen to shrink. So when it's tried to shrink, you can see a crack formation on the top surface of your concrete, and then you can measure the crack width. So this basically helps to obtain the crack width measurements using restraint shrinkage test setup. So when you need to consider about creep, then you can do creep testing as well. So what you have to do is, for creeping, you have to apply load, compressive load. So in this case, this is for compression creep test. And here this basically indicates flexural creep test that we do to find the deformation due to flexural creep. So when you have compression creep, you are basically applying the axial load, and then similar ways you have DMAC pins placed on the concrete surface. So here you can see the DMAC pins placed on the concrete surface, and using the DMAC gauge you can measure the distance between those two pins, or the consequent, the difference, change in difference between these two pins and then these two pins to get the overall deformation. And here in this case, you can place LVDTs, or crack mouth opening displacement sensors, which could measure the crack that is forming under your element due to flexural loading case. So when you have flexural loading case that is going to deflect and crack, so you can use either LVDT or crack with cage, which helps you to measure the crack mouth opening, displacement. So here you can see the specimens were placed one over the other, and then the loading will be applied here, or whichever helps you to induce the flexural loading condition. Typically, a lever arm will be placed here, and then the loading will be applied at this point. And these are like you can have it a good data accuracy system. So here you can see the cables going on, and which has connected to a data acquisition system, which basically records all the information from your specimen, like how much load is being applied, how much deformation is occurring. So in general, for real structural problems, depending on the importance of the structure, we do place such type of sensors on the structure itself over the time to monitor its performance. So those things will be connected to a system called data acquisition system, which records and saves the informations from the structure, so using which we can understand the condition of that particular structure. So that's all with the shrinkage and creep. Now we'll get into the next topic called abrasion. So you all know what is abrasion, right? So abrasion that you can define like the failure of your surface, basically wearing of your surface that could be due to repeated rubbing, rolling, sliding, or frictional process. Again, like repeated actions of lightly loaded rubber tires or foot traffic in the form of dusting, loss of surface texture, and polishing. So you can see, so these things, the surface is lost at this particular portion. So why? Because due to the vehicular movement, the surface is subjected to continuous friction or the attrition process that will lead to loss of surface. So where do you expect such type of failure? So you can expect in industrial floors, which will be subjected to heavy vehicular movement, or any road structures or highways or bridge structures which will be in contact with constant vehicular movement. And these things will get manifested by localized crushing, scratching, or attrition. So when you have some abrasive medium in case of heavily loaded steel wheels, so those are things that will lead to such type of abrasion issues in your structures. So you can look at the general mechanism that we can consider for abrasion. So here you can see the first case where you have intact concrete is in good condition. So your cement mortar and the circle basically indicates your aggregates. So cement mortar and aggregates are in intact and in good condition, and over the time when your structure is exposed to the vehicular movement, so the surface is getting damaged and part of the surface is lost here, and that lead to the exposure of your aggregate. So here you see part of aggregates are exposed, and some part of your cement matrix got lost. So surface, you can observe small surface loss at that point. And then again over the time you can see that you start losing your aggregate particles itself. So the cement paste has gone from this part, and then the aggregates has gone, and then that led to further degradation. So you observe a significant considerable amount of surface loss here. And again over the duration you can see a lot of aggregates being lost, and almost the thickness of your surface has reduced significantly. And over the time you will not see any um, thickness at all when you have the surface lost completely due to oppression. So here is another example where you have a typical concrete floor and without any floor hardness. So in such cases, when there is any heavy vehicle passing on it, the surface will get damaged. So here you can see due to the abrasion, cement skin wears off, leaving potholes and on undulated surface. So then you will your surface will not be smooth anymore, and it will have lot of undulations, and that will not give you a smooth ride while you are vehicle passing on it. And these are another examples, over the time how aggregates can also get removed. So you can see a lot of aggregates are removed. So here the aggregates are exposed, and here you cannot see any aggregates of the cement matrix. So this will further lead to the removal of aggregates present over there. So what are the ways to control such type of abrasion, or what are the ways to increase the abrasion resistance of your concrete, right? So you can consider these three factors which can influence the performance and help you to increase the abrasion resistance. What is the one is that compressive strength of your concrete, another one is water cement ratio, and the type of aggregate that you use, the hardness of your aggregate. So you can see here, this graph indicates as you have higher compressive strength, the reduction in volume is less. So the percentage of loss is less. So you will have less percentage of loss when you have higher compressive strength. So as the compressive strength reduces, basically your material is the strength is not that significant or not that strong to withstand the abrasion or friction. So that may experience huge surface loss. So the percentage of loss will get increased when you have less compressive strength. So another case here you can see the abrasion erosion loss by type of aggregate that you use, and then the water cement ratio. So this basically indicates the water cement ratio. As the water cement ratio increases, you will see more loss due to abrasion. If you have less water cement ratio, the loss will be less. And this basically indicates the type of aggregate that you use based on its hardness. So when you have limestone, that is softer material, so you will experience more what loss. And then chert, that is like inert material, so you expect less loss using chert material. Again, here you can see the variation with respect to the water cement ratio. As water cement ratio increases, you can see within the same type of aggregate you can see increased loss when you increase the water cement ratio. This basically gives you an idea about how significant these factors to be considered while you design your concrete. So when you are looking for abrasion resistant concrete, you have to give a care that you choose high compressive strength and with less water cement ratio, and you have higher hardness aggregate to be used in your concrete. So now these are the point to summarize how to ensure good abrasion resistance. You can choose higher compressive strength. You can reduce the water cement ratio. So when you reduce the water cement ratio, you will be experiencing workability issues. So you can use superplasticizer to account that. And then you can use harder aggregate and use of mineral admixtures, especially like when you use mineral admixtures, your concrete structure becomes denser. So there will be better to resist the abrasion. And then you can use well graded sand instead of fine sand, because the sand is one of the fine particles that get damaged easily when it is subjected to abrasion. And at the same time, similarly, you can use large size of aggregates than the smaller size aggregates, uh, especially to reduce the surface area, so that that will withstand the abrasion in a better way. And ensuring water curing than air curing. And so any durability issues, no, so you have to ensure that you're doing adequate water curing to get a proper structure with less permeability. So that is why the curing plays a major role in ensuring the durability of your concrete. So if you expect that your floor is going to be subjected to heavy loads, then you can provide a surface hardening solution, so that it can withstand such heavy loads without getting deformed. The surface hardening solutions you can be that can be used uh, in both new floors or in old upgraded floors. So these are some examples of such solutions which will help you to meet the requirement. And then you can avoid formation of lichens. So that is basically that you can experience such weak layer of concrete forming on the surface due to bleeding and segregation of fresh aggregate. So these things, this becomes too weak when it is subjected to abrasion, and that will lead to further deformation. So avoiding such things will help you to achieve better, denser surface. All right. So I'll stop it here, and the rest of the thing we will continue in the next class. So we need to cover erosion and cavitation, and then some aspect on fire attack, then freezing and frosting that you already know the fundamentals of it. Just to address few things how to handle situation better when you have such atmospheric conditions. With that, we will be done with concrete behavior in general, and then the failure mechanism associated with it. Then we can move to the next module called condition assessment. All right. Anything else?